Hi, good evening everyone. We're going to start tonight and in just a moment by considering the future. Our title is a very forward-looking title. It's suggesting that whatever it is that we're hoping for, whatever these uncertainties are, they're going to occur in the future. Now, you're sure you could be a historian, and therefore you might be uncertain about the things of the past, but we're not all historians, and this title isn't talking about the past, it is talking about the future. Tonight, as with a lot of things, definitions are going to matter. So, rather than like in a book where the glossary is at the end, we're going to start by defining some words for tonight first. We're going to be using some slightly ambiguous terms. And it's definitely going to help if we start by defining the words we're going to be using, especially since later we're going to see how some of these words have different meanings in the Bible than what we think, and how different they are to how we use them today. Now, as I said before, we are looking at the future side of these words, which I'll explain that in a moment. So to start our glossary then, let's consider our first word, uncertainty. Of course, it comes from the word uncertain. So that's the word we need to define rather than uncertainty. Now, as you can see on the slide, uncertain can be used in different contexts. Something could be uncertain. For instance, it's uncertain whether it will rain more or less this year than last year. We don't know that. We can't rely on whether it will rain or won't rain, and it's certainly not already predefined in a way that we can measure. Not only that, you as a person can be uncertain as well. It can be a state of experience. Now, normally you aren't just uncertain in the same way that you can be happy by yourself without any sort of exterior influences. Instead, you're almost always uncertain about something in particular, whether that be the grade that you might have got on a test, or you could be uncertain about where to find the milk in a grocery store you've never been to before. Now, I like pictorial representations of things, and this is partly one of the reasons why I have the whiteboard up here. So we're just going to pull that one out now. We're going to make a scale from 0 all the way down here to 100%. And this scale here represents how confident you might be about a certain thing happening or a certain experience occurring. Perfect. Wonderful. And that's based on the words that you say. Now, based on this scale, I'd ask the question, where would you put the word uncertain on that scale? Now, I tend to think that being 0% confident about something, you might say there's no chance. If you say whether you're going to go to the store today, you're going to say there's no chance. I'm not going to do it. Absolutely zero. And if you're completely confident about something, you might say that you guarantee that you're going to do that. If we were to put uncertain on this scale, we might put it nearer to the left side here. I'll put those words guarantee in there as well. Just so you all can get an understanding of the scale. Now, the reason I'm putting it there is, for instance, if I asked you whether you think you're going to win your soccer game next week, you might say, oh, I'm uncertain. If you were saying you're uncertain, it's unlikely that you think you're more likely to win it than less likely. When you say uncertain, it gives negative connotations. Now, our next word in our glossary is a word that we're going to touch on a little later, and this one is easier to find and easier to put on our scale here. The word is promise. Now, again, it can be used in a few different ways. For instance, you could say that a restaurant menu shows promise, but that's not the way we're going to be using it tonight. Instead, as you can see, we're looking at it from the perspective of a promise. The definitions are essentially that you can promise something as an action, and you can also have a promise as a noun. We all know what the word means. It means something or someone is stating an absolute. In its definition, it means that something will happen or someone will do something. And while sometimes it's abused and people promise things that they can't actually fulfill, or they're not even in a position to be able to guarantee, that's the definition. I'm sure you would all agree that this word belongs at the very right-hand side of our scale. Now, if I'm honest, promise almost gives even more confident a rating than guarantee. It feels more personal. It's more assuring than guarantee. So if we were to make a scale that was more than 100%, I'd actually put it in the 110% mark, but I'm not going to do that because, well, it's 100%. Now, our final word is the other main word in our title for tonight, and this is going to be the main focus of the second half of our lecture tonight. The word is hope. Now, hope is a little like uncertainty. It's not an easy word to define. There's some connotations there. But everyone really knows what it means and how it feels when they say the word hope. The definition by Oxford Dictionary, in its current use in the English language, is up on the slide as two things. One, you can have hope. You might have hope that you'll receive a promotion. And two, you can be hoping. You can verb hoping. In this case, if you were someone who gambles, you could say, I really hope I get a jackpot. Both definitions are really just the same ways you can see it. One is a feeling you can have hope, and the other is an action. You can be hoping for something. But this word is a little bit harder to put on our scale that we've got for tonight, because, for instance, given that the scale is a reference to the words you might say dependent on how confident you are that an action will occur, the word hope used in today's context could mean really anywhere from the very left side of our graph all the way maybe to the three-quarter mark, 75% mark on the other side. And the reason is this. If I was to say, I hope I win the lottery, here is how confident I am that I'm going to win it. That's my confidence. My confidence is next to zero. I can still hope it, but my confidence is all the way down here. In this case, I know that my chances are small. I'm not confident that I'm going to win it, but I might still hope for it. And alternatively, you could say, I hope I get that promotion that we were talking about. When you might have already weighed up all the other people in your workplace, you might have been working really hard, and you've weighed up all the other different factors that influence whether you're going to get that promotion, and you have a bit of context for that hope. You can make a slight call on whether or not you think you will or won't. Definitely you still wouldn't be confident, but you might put hope in that case up here. So rather than uncertain being a word that means you aren't sure what's going to happen, you definitely aren't certain about it, and in fact it gives negative connotations, you feel like it's going to go bad anyway. Hope, on the other hand, can be a positive thing whether it's well-founded or not. It means you don't know what the outlook is, but you're feeling hopeful and you think maybe, just maybe, it will happen. Now that we've understood the definitions for the words that we're going to be using tonight, let's jump straight into considering some people. I'll need some audience interaction for this section. Our title tonight is Hope in a World of Uncertainty. So using all of your collective brains and thoughts, we're going to find out really what are some of the main uncertainties in the world today. I'm going to be putting up some pictures of some random individuals. After I've given you a brief description of the person, I want all of you to think up some uncertainties and things in their life that they might be uncertain about, and we'll spitball them and stick them on the whiteboard up here on the other side. Simply put, we're going to define what specifically are the uncertainties in the world today and for everyone's futures. So to do that, let's split this whiteboard up. Into 3 sections. One we are going to title Maria. One we are going to title Mihailo. title, Raj. Now here we have Maria. She's a 35-year-old single mother renting in a low-income neighbourhood in Sydney. She works 2 jobs to support her 2 children, both of whom are in primary school. Now Maria constantly worries about making ends meet, providing for her children's needs, and ensuring they have a stable home environment. She faces uncertainties about her job security, rising living costs, and the quality of education her children receive. So, with all of your minds, we'll get some ideas. What are some things that Maria might be worried or uncertain about in her future?
Her rent.
Rent. Brilliant. We'll put that one under finances. Job security, absolutely. She's working 2 jobs, both of which are minimum wage. Children's education. Is there anything specifically that she might be worried about with her children's education? Might be worried about the grades they're getting, whether she's raising them right, whether the teachers are good, if she's concerned about morals, the environment. Put that as a separate one. Where she's living, the environment where she's living. Because if she's in a low-income neighbourhood, I think that just about covers it for Maria. Now, of course, she's going to have other worries, but just a couple of statistics that Maria might be particularly concerned with. If she works 60 hours a week and she gets a gross amount a week of $1,200 a week working on minimum wage, after tax, we reduce that down to $1,000 a week. Now, the average rent in Sydney for a 2-bedroom unit is between $400 and $700 a week. That leaves her with roughly $600 to $300 left in a week to pay for everything else. Now, according to a website that tells you, a website called Numbeo, which ranks how much the cost of living is in different cities, Adelaide is approximately $950 a month to live in Adelaide. And if we put that into Sydney, and for multiple people, that $950 is for a single person living alone, Maria's finances might not be looking in the best position, and she's doing everything that she can to sort it out. She's working 2 jobs, she's trying to support her children. Maria has some uncertainties. We'll move on. Now that we've covered Maria, we've thought of a bunch of different uncertainties that she might have to worry about. We've got a very different individual now in Mihailo. Mihailo, and I did check the pronunciation of that one, is a 25-year-old recent college graduate living in Lviv, just east of the Polish border within Ukraine. Now, despite having a degree in engineering, he's struggling to find stable employment due to the economic downturn and ongoing political instability in his country. He dreams of building a better future for himself and his family, but he faces uncertainties about his career prospects, personal safety, and the possibility of having to leave his homeland and seek opportunities elsewhere, and even the drafting in the ongoing conflict. What are some things specific to Mihailo that he might be worried about? Seeing another day. Life.
Mental and physical health.
Mental health. And physical. I'll put that here. Conscription. On that one, Zelensky is about to propose, he's proposed that, it's passed Parliament, to bring the conscription or the drafting age from 27 down to 25. So from a high low, that is directly related to what he's up to. Even if he's got an engineering degree, he's still a young man at the age of 25. So that's something he might be concerned about. Is there anything else you can think of? Food? And just even basic necessities. Cost of living, everything that's here, yep. Losing family, yep. I'm going to put that as just family because there's a whole host of uncertainties that might be under the family side of things. I think we've mostly covered, again, there's going to be a whole load more, but we'll move through. We don't want to spend too much time on the negative side of this lecture tonight. There's a lot of things that he's going to be concerned about. Well, actually, we might put one more up there, and that is the political side of things. Simply because we don't know what sort of perspective he is. He might be a Russian nationalist for a week at care. He might have a whole load of different things, different mental struggles that he's going with his mind as to how he views the kind of conflict that he's placed inside. Let's turn to one final character who, again, is going to be experiencing some very different circumstances. Now, here we have Raj. He is a 70-year-old small business owner in a rural town. He runs a family-owned farm that's been passed down for generations. However, Raj faces numerous uncertainties in his line of work. He worries about unpredictable weather patterns affecting his crops, fluctuating market prices for agricultural products, and the impact of government policies on farming subsidies and regulations. And despite his dedication to preserving his family's legacy, Raj grapples with the uncertainty of whether his business will struggle or thrive to survive an ever-changing economic landscape and amidst his aging years. Is there anything that Raj might have specifically to himself that he'd be concerned about or uncertain about in the future? Health. Now, 70 isn't old by any stretch, of course, but he is getting on in years. He's running a farm still. That might have some concerns for his health. Not specified.
Does he have a son?
Does he? Yes, he does have children.
A son?
A son, yes. So I'm gonna interpret that one. I'm gonna put family up there. And we don't even know if Raj's family wants to continue on this legacy that he is part of. He's been running a family farm. He doesn't even know if his children want to continue running that farm. They might want to move on, and then he's stuck with the farm all by himself, and he might feel bad from that. I'm going to put a couple more on there. I'm going to put technology. Simply because Raj is now in a world where technology is important. He runs a small business. Technology is allowing bigger and bigger farms to overtake what he might be able to produce. That might impact his finances. Perfect. And I might leave it at that. There is also the weather problems, but we'll move on from there. So we've covered our uncertainties. We've got on the board now quite a number of uncertainties, not all of them by any stretch, but I think you'll agree that we could think of a whole lot more. We're not going to dwell on that part of the lecture too much for now. So in fact, we're actually going to flip this over and back to this. Now, we haven't really touched, to begin with, on our title for tonight, other than understanding what an uncertainty is, and to define what hope and promise are. Now, we've looked at uncertainties, all these things in the world that make it hard to know what to do or what's next in your life. But now we want to be quite a bit more positive. These things are uncertainties. But the Bible offers a way of being certain about the future. The Bible provides a hope. Now, immediately, you're all probably thinking back to this graph and saying, well, hope's nice, But we've established that it's not certain anyways as a word, haven't we? And you would be right. The word hope as it's used today wouldn't mean that you have a certainty ahead of you amidst all the uncertainties. That's not how the word hope is used today. But that's where we get to see where the Bible comes in, because the word hope in the Bible doesn't indicate about 0 to 70, 80% confidence. It is 100% guaranteed. We'll get to exploring what the hope is in a moment. But first we need to understand that the hope of the Bible is only a hope if you are willing to accept it. The Bible doesn't offer hope simply as a free worry take-awayer. You have to do something too. And that something is very simple, but also very profound. That something is believe. The Bible does not offer a hope to those who refuse to believe that it does. That very sentence is logical when we think about it. You can't be given a hope by considering the works of a God which you don't think exists. Before I first dive into the Bible this evening, I'd like to take you back to the book of Hebrews where our reading was tonight. That's why I've chosen it for our reading. To what is colloquially known as the chapter of faith in Hebrews 11. Now, belief and faith are, for all intents and purposes, the same thing. If you believe, that means you have faith. They essentially are the noun and verb versions of the same concept. And what is the concept of faith? Well, that's why we're here in Hebrews 11. There's going to be there is a definition of faith in the very first verse of this chapter, but we're actually going to start at the end of our reading tonight in verse 6, where if you read along it says, "But without faith, it is impossible to please him," that's God. "For he that cometh to God must believe that he, God, is, and that he, God, is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him, God." Now this verse begins by saying, you cannot please God without faith. In other words, if you want to please God, then you must have faith. And then it elaborates and logically explains that first statement, because 1, whoever comes to God must first believe in his existence. Now that's obvious, because if you plan on coming to God to try and please him, you have to first believe that he even exists. Now that word believe in that little spot there is the verb form of that same word for faith in the start of the verse. The word faith is pistis in the original Greek, and the New Testament that the New Testament was written in, and the word believe is the word pistiu, which is the action of faith. Now secondly, whoever wants to please God must also have faith that he is a rewarder of those that seek him. What's that telling us? Well, first, it's still in this definition of what faith is to try and please God. Firstly, then, we can extrapolate that faith is believing in God's existence and that God has a reward. Faith wouldn't be faith without either one of those. Either we believe in a God that does reward those who seek him, or we don't believe in God at all. And we couldn't believe in a God whose reward was there without believing in a God, so that can't possibly exist. Now, linking in that verse 1 definition in the chapter, we can see an even more profound and succinct definition of faith. And reading verse 1 of Hebrews 11. "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Well, what substance? In this context, it means a concrete basis, a foundation of things hoped for. Now, it's also the evidence of things we haven't seen. Those two statements of faith, if we were to reword them, means faith is the substance of things hoped for the future, and the evidence of things that have happened in the past. Faith is believing in the words written in the Bible and the events that occurred there, because of course we haven't seen those events with our own eyes. And faith is also believing in the things that will happen in the future, believing in the things that are hoped for. With all that context then, we've now come to our concept of hope. We found the word hope here in verse 1 of Hebrews, so now we can come to the real point of our lecture tonight. We've seen that the world is full of uncertainties. We know that. Having established that the requirement is of faith before we can even consider hope, we now turn to understand the hope of the Bible. And to do that, we'll just turn back probably just one page in your Bible to Hebrews chapter 10, specifically in the verses of 22 and 23, which I'll read for you now. Verse 22. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. You might be thinking, we've gone back to talking about faith. We're not talking about hope here. We covered hope earlier, and we did. So why are we looking at this passage to understand hope? Well, hope is a bit hidden in this passage, but it's definitely there. First, we do understand that first verse. We already get the verse 22. If we want to draw near to God and please him, we can do so with the full assurance of faith. We are confident and 100% on the existence of God and come near to him. Now, in actual fact, we're going to put faith up on our little scale here. Faith is having an absolute belief in God. It's confident in his existence and in his reward and then the hope that he's provided. We've understood that from Hebrews 11. But still, where is hope in Hebrews chapter 10? Well, it's in the next verse, in verse 23. We understand the need for faith from verse 22. We have to hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering. This verse seems to add absolutely nothing to what we already know, unless we look at the word for faith in verse 23 there. Now, the word there is not our word pistis, meaning faith, throughout the whole of Hebrews chapter 11. And even in the verse 22, that word for faith in verse 22 is pistis. This word is a different word. It's the word elpis. Now, this word elpis is our word for hope. Every other time you find the word elpis in the Bible, it's been translated hope, except in this verse. So, if we corrected this verse and we read on, let us hold fast to the profession of hope without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. Now, also consider, as we mentioned earlier, the biblical word for hope doesn't mean that you wish something will happen, just 0 to 70% confident that it will happen. As evidenced by this verse, there are 3 reasons why we can say that the word for hope is absolutely confident that something will happen. The first one is that we hold fast the profession of our hope without wavering. Normally, looking at our graph, hope is something that wavers. It is a wavering word. Modern English hope is something that is not concrete. You can waver. You're allowed to do that. It'd be perfectly fine for you to say, I hope I win, but I might not. That's not true of biblical hope. Here, we are told in verse 23 that if we have faith, then we must hold fast our hope without wavering at all. The second reason we think that the statement that the word hope here is absolutely confident is the little brackets just after the word hope. Now, reason 2 and 3 are closely linked, so we'll cover them together. In that bracket, it says that God, the he in that little bracket, is faithful. Now, faith, we've already established, faith is another 100% a word. It's not a word that means there's any room for doubt. If we have faith in God, as verse 22 said, then we can trust that he is also 100% faithful to us, and to us to do what? He is faithful that promised. Meaning he who is 100% faithful, has also promised. And that's the third reason why we can put it in our 100% category, because the word promise is also in our 100% category. There is no ambiguity in this verse. It's clear that to those who have faith, this hope isn't a matter at all of it might or it might not happen. This is a certain hope that has been promised by God. All right, we've covered quite a bit there. Let's pause. And we know that faith needs to come first. Otherwise, hope isn't something worth considering if we don't believe in God. If we do, though, then the hope is guaranteed, and we can have 100% confidence in it happening. But you're all probably mentally screaming for the next step. What is this hope? The Bible guarantees a hope, but what even is it? Well, using the other side of our whiteboard once again, the Bible addresses pretty much every single one of these uncertainties and provides a certain hope for relief in that area. So no matter who you are, the Bible can provide you with a guaranteed hope, even in an uncertain world. We're going to flip this one back over. We will have it on the whiteboard, but I just want to have you all looking at this one as well. Have it on the projector, sorry, not the whiteboard. And we'll summarise the main uncertainties. I've picked 5 of them from the brainstorming that we've already done, and we're going to see what God promises as part of the hope that he offers to those who have faith in him, and how he offers to solve their particular uncertainties. These are the 5 that we're going to cover. We're going to look at health-related concerns. We're going to look at how the Bible addresses those health-related concerns. We're going to look at government policies and justice. That covers off probably Mihailo the main, given that he's the one probably most impacted by political consequences, given that there's 2 countries that he's stuck in between of. We're going to look at safety for family, which is really on all 3 of them. Maria concerned about her children, Mihailo concerned about his family, his brothers and sisters, if he has any, his parents, and Raj is concerned about his family as well. He's aging, he's worried about how he's going to provide for his family. We'll look at global peace. Again, impacting Maria and Raj, but Mihailo mostly impacted by global peace. And financial safety, again one to be looked at for everyone, really. Everyone's concerned about finances. To begin with then, we're going to look at health concerns. Now you can turn up each of these passages that we're going to put up on the screen. We're not going to have the entire passage on the screen, but we're going to have sections of the most particularly relevant. The Bible addresses each one of these uncertainties directly or indirectly. In 2 Peter 1, we read, "According as his divine power has given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness through the knowledge of him that hath called us to glory and virtue, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust." And it does go on, but look, here's an direct example of Peter, the disciple of the Lord Jesus Christ, and one of his closest friends, writing about the hope. This example is directly related to a number of the uncertainties that we've got in the world here, but I think that this one mainly relates to the uncertainties we might have surrounding health. God, through this passage, has promised us all things pertaining to life and godliness and virtue and glory. Not only that, we have these great and precious promises that through belief in them, we might partake of the divine nature and escape the corruption of death. And if we pair that with the words of Jesus Christ himself, when he says in John 6 verse 41, "Verily, verily," or "Truly, truly, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life." Clearly then, to those who believe, they can trust that God cares about them and wishes to give them everlasting immortal life to heal their infirmities, just as Jesus healed so many all those years ago. Whereas partakers of the divine nature and filled with the glory and virtue will no longer need to be uncertain about failing health issues. Moving on, in Luke 12, verse 31 to 34, I'll read the whole passage, even though we've only got the first verse there. But rather, seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And this verse, Jesus is reassuring his disciples of God's pleasure in giving them the kingdom. While the emphasis is on spiritual inheritance, it implies a promise of God's provision and blessings for his people in the future kingdom. Moving on once more, this one really covers off the financial side of things. We might think of ourselves as worried about finances, but what this passage is telling us is that where our focus really should lie. We might be uncertain about the troubles in this world, but as far as finances are concerned, Jesus states, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. In Isaiah 9, from verse 6 to 7, we read, For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David, upon his kingdom, to order it, to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. We can take consolation from this promise that the Son of God, Jesus Christ, will be called all these things. He'll be the Prince of Peace. He will be a just king. He'll be a righteous king. He will uphold all the moral justice forever in God's kingdom, which will be set up on the earth, ensuring policies that are made fairly and morally. Pair this with another later passage in Isaiah, we see that the Son of God, the descendant of King David and Jesse his father, will prioritize the protection of the oppressed and destroy those who abuse them. In Isaiah 11, verse 1 to 4, we read, There will come a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahweh. And shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of Yahweh. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears, as governments these days do. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. Here we see a direct example of how the hope offers government policies and justice in the future in a kingdom that God will set up. And we can move on straight into the idea of peace from this as well, when we read in Micah 4 verse 3, And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift sword up against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. The Son of God, Jesus Christ, who will reign over the earth and in his kingdom, will also make sure that all disputes are settled reasonably. During this time, all the nations will turn from focusing on creating weapons to destroy each other, and instead will turn to a more peaceful, global economic view with agriculture in mind. They're no longer trained to fight anymore, and they won't continue to attack each other. Going back to some of our statistics that I didn't mention earlier, in the drafting side of things within Ukraine, Zelensky is also maybe asking for 500,000 more soldiers within the age bracket of 25 to 27. Moving on once more, we come to the last section that we'll cover, the safety for families. This one's a bit more broad-reaching. Here in Revelation 21, at the end of the hope that God has offered, not that it will end, because it will be everlasting, but in its fulfillment, God shall wipe away all tears from our eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. For the former things are passed away. We can learn from this passage that God is looking forward to a future in which he can personally wipe away the tears from the crying people. And the mourners will no longer have death, sadness, pain to worry about for them or for their families, because these will ultimately be eradicated as part of God's plan and hope. Okay, so where does that leave us tonight? Our title slide was Hope in an Uncertain World. We've seen clearly that the word hope, as it is in the normal use of the word, is different to the word hope in the Bible. We don't just have a hope in an uncertain world. The Bible offers a certain hope for certain peace and safety in an uncertain world. So what's the next thing? You may still be in your Bibles in Hebrews 10. We've looked at how it discusses faith as a requirement, first in verse 22, and then hope that we can believe in as a result of that faith that's promised and assured by a faithful God. Well, once we understand that the hope that is offered, the only logical response is seen in verse 24 and verse 25, where it reads, "And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more, as ye see the day approaching." These verses take that next step in the response of love. We understand what God has done for us through his Son and in offering us this hope of the Bible, and we believe it because we have faith. We then respond in love toward him and toward one another, building one another up in good works together, following what the Bible teaches, being baptized, living a life through faith to glorify God and grow a relationship with him, and continue to exhort one another as we see the day approaching. The day when Jesus Christ, our Lord himself, will return to this earth and finally establish the certain hope for this uncertain world.